In this video, we'll weight paint the mechanical arm of the character, so you'll add even more weight painting tools and workflows to your skill set. Now, let's disable wireframe. I'll also hide these widgets. And let's see how we can handle the mechanical arm. First of all, if we try to parent the mechanical arm to the rig with automatic weights, as we saw earlier, it doesn't work, and it doesn't work because of this error that we are getting. If I click on it, I can expand this window and you'll see bone heat weighting failed to find solution for one or more bone. I mentioned this problem all the way back in level 1 because it is fairly common. As your characters get more and more complex, you'll definitely see it. This simply means that the automatic weights algorithm failed. It didn't work, so you will not get any weights. I have a specialized video about this problem, and now you're definitely advanced enough, you can watch it and find out all solutions to this problem. But the solution we'll apply in this video will be to simply set the weights manually. The bones for the mechanical arms are relatively simple. We just have the upper arm, lower arm, hand, and finger bones. So I'll go to the mechanical arm and I'll try to split it into parts because most of it is a hard surface object and it doesn't need to bend. So we'll split it into parts and just assign each part to a specific bone. Let's go to edit mode and I'll place my mouse over parts of the upper arm and just press L. I'll also select this pipe here. It might be easier to select in polygon mode. This is my upper arm. I'll press P and separate it into a separate object. Now, this part here will be slightly special. It will be semi-soft and it will bend in this area. So let's press P and separate it into a new object, and we'll handle it separately. And similar to this cable here, I'll split into a separate object and I'll see how I'm going to handle it. Now I'll select these parts here for the lower arm. And this part, but not this one. Now I'll split these into a separate object. And this will be another soft part. So I'll split it as a separate object. Next we have the palm. It's a single object, so I'll just select it and separate it. And I'll keep all fingers as their own object for now. The deforming bone for the upper arm is called DEF upper arm.L. So let's copy this name. Go to the upper arm geometry, edit mode, select everything, go into data, vertex groups, expand the search field, and paste the name here. Select it and press assign. Now the upper arm will be controlled by this bone. Let's do the same for the lower arm. Just select all vertices, find lower arm.L, and assign. Now this part will be assigned to DEF hand.L and press assign. So now we have a big portion of the mechanical arm moving. Now let's see what we can do about this soft part. I'll select the rig, shift select the soft part, and go to weight paint mode. I'll alt click on the lower arm bone and shift alt and click on the upper arm. And then I'll go to weights, assign automatic from bones. This is basically the same algorithm as automatic weights, but it will only be applied for the selected bones here. Now this seems to kind of work, but the lower arm has too much influence over the soft part. So let's select the upper arm bone and paint positive weights here. And at the same time, I want to remove weights from the lower part of this soft transition. It's starting to work. Maybe it will need a little bit of softening here. Just distribute the weights until it looks good. Now I can rotate this mechanical arm in all sorts of direction, which doesn't make sense. It should only be able to rotate on a single axis. So in pose mode, select this lower arm control bone for the FK, go to item, switch rotation mode to XYZ Euler, and test which axis the arm should rotate on. For me, it's the X-axis. So I'll lock Y and Z. Now this rotation works quite well. We have a little problem here with this mechanical part. We'll fix it with additional rigging. And the soft transition is also behaving nicely. Now for this soft transition, I can just go to edit mode, select this outer loop, press Ctrl plus to select about half of this part, find DEF lower arm.L and assign it to it, because this part of the soft transition will be affected by this bone here. Click assign, then press Ctrl I, find DEF hand.L, select it and assign. Now I really like this effect. We have this slight pinching because there's no smooth transition between the weights, but that kind of works to our advantage. It kind of makes it look like there is something hard underneath this soft material. However, if you want to soften it a bit, select the rig, shift select this soft part, go to weight paint mode, select these two bones that affect the weights of this part, go to weights, smooth, and choose selected pose bones. This will smooth the weights between the selected bones. You can increase or decrease the iterations. I'll just keep it to 1. And now we have slightly smoother weights, and I kind of like this. So I'll keep it like this. Now let's go to the fingers. Select the rig, shift select the fingers, go to weight paint mode. And now we can use the assign automatic from bones technique. What I could do is select these 3 fingers, go to vertex selection, press L over this finger to select the vertices, and then assign automatic from bones. And that will assign weights only for the selected bones and only to the selected vertices. Let's repeat this for the remaining fingers. And now let's test. The weights can be improved and made a little bit harder. Here, the topology of these fingers itself will not allow us to achieve perfect deformations, but we can get pretty close. And in fact, I think this is looking okay already. Now, the bigger problem here is that my point of rotation of the base of the finger is a bit off. So unfortunately, I'll have to go to edit mode. I'll switch to solid shading and toggle X-ray. And I'll select the base of the finger and offset it a bit like this. As you do this, try to keep the fingers as straight as possible. And let's do this for the remaining fingers. And I would recommend selecting all finger bones and pressing Shift H to avoid selecting and moving any unrelated bones. Okay, if I rotate all fingers on their local Z axis, I'm now getting something much better. Now I don't exactly like how these fingers bunch together. This is because of the roll of the bones, so let's try to fix it. I'll go to solid shading and enable X-ray and just select all bones of this finger, for example, and then press Ctrl R and roll them slightly. And same here. Okay, now I'm getting something much better. I'll try to tweak this one a little bit still. Okay, nice. Let's test the thumb now. The thumb can disconnect from the hand. There are two solutions here. Either we model some additional polygons here so that this disconnection is not that apparent, or we can take this black part here as soft and we can assign the outer vertices to the hand bone so that they don't disconnect. Here I'm going to go for the modeling approach. So I'll isolate this, select the outer vertices, press E to extrude them, scale them down, F to fill, Control T to add triangles, and that will probably do it. Okay, so this is a very simple fix, not exactly perfect. I can probably improve it a bit by tweaking the origin or rotation point of this finger. And it's not quite there, so let's try to fix it with weights as well. I'll go to weight paint mode, activate the hand bone, and I'll paint some weights here at the base of this thumb. And this should make it feel more grounded and connected. Yeah, this is starting to get there. So we solved the rotation of the lower arm in FK mode, but let's test it in IK mode as well. I'll switch the left arm to IK and rotate, and it's mostly okay, but we can improve it by unhiding MCH bones, and I want the MCH IK. I'll select this bone, and as we did for the legs, I want to log the Y and Z axis in the inverse kinematics settings. And this will ensure that this arm rotates only on its local x-axis. So the mechanical parts will stay connected as they should. I can do the same for the organic arm, and I will. It is not as important as for the mechanical arm, but for a realistic character, I'll generally lock these axes. Okay, I'll remove the star and hide MCH. Okay, our mechanical arm is now working. Let's see what else we need to tweak. This cable is not weighted yet. And as a final touch, we'll also work on the connection between the mechanical arm and the cloth here. Because at certain poses, they might disconnect. Let's work on the cable first. So select the rig, shift select the cable, and go to weight paint mode. Now I'll alt click on the upper arm deformation bone. I'll go to tool and I'll check my settings. I want blend in add mode. I'll reduce strength a bit. This mirror setting doesn't do anything, so I'll disable it. And now I'll simply click and paint most of this cable red for the upper arm bone. Then switch to the lower arm bone, and I'll paint weights for it at the end of the cable. So now I have something like this. I'll shift and click to smooth a bit, and then I'll test my deformation. So this is looking okay. We probably need a little bit more weights here for the lower arm bone, and then some smoothing. And this is looking quite reasonable. Now, of course, we could add additional bones here or some other mechanism to actually rig this cable, but I'll keep this for a specialized mechanical rigging course. At this level, weights will be enough. And let's move on to the connection of the arm and the shoulder. For that, I'll go to object mode, select only my rig, go to pose mode. I'll select everything and delete any existing keyframes. Then go to frame 1 and keyframe the IK target and pull. Then at frame 10, I'll bring the arm down and keyframe. Go to frame 20 and I'll extend the arm forward. Something like this. Let's keyframe the IK controls. And then at frame 30, I'll press Alt-R, Alt-G to reset, and then move the arm up. Now for the arm up movement, I also want to engage the shoulder. So let's go to frame 20, press I to keyframe the shoulder control, and then at frame 30, I'll bring it up to about minus 95 degrees, and I to keyframe, and then raise the arm. And keyframe, and then at frame 40, I'll tweak the pole to achieve a different rotation of the upper arm. And again, keyframe. Just tweaking the animation slightly. But the most important thing is to have these main poses so that I can test and tweak the deformations. Okay. Let's select the rig, shift select the body, and go to weight paint mode. So now mainly we'll have to tweak the balance between weights coming from the upper arm and the shoulder and the way they affect this area here. To ensure that we don't see this disconnection between the geometries, we want to assign this outer edge of the body geometry fully to the upper arm bone. So I'm going to select this whole open loop by holding Alt and clicking twice on the loop. This selects all vertices. Now back to weight paint mode. I can select the upper arm bone, enable vertex selection, and then I can increase my strength and just paint on all of these vertices. Okay, now I can press Ctrl+ to select the next row of vertices. I'll reduce the strength quite a bit, and then click on these vertices so that they're also affected by the upper arm. Okay, now I'll disable vertex selection and smooth a bit in this area. I also know that the upper arm shouldn't affect too much of this part of the body below the armpit, so I'll just paint it out right away. And I'll also remove weights from the back of the character. Now the arm and cloth should stay connected. I see a little overlapping here, so let me try to just shift and click, and it seems to fix it. Here I see some slight overlapping. I can improve it a bit by adding weights for the shoulder in this area. I don't want to become too obsessed with these details. They are very small, and you won't see them unless you really zoom in. Here I see that cloth disconnecting, so I'll enable vertex selection, and I still have these vertices selected. So I just need to enable my upper arm, enable vertex selection, and click in this area until everything connects. Then I'll disable vertex selection and smooth a bit. I need to paint some positive weights for the upper arm, for these vertices as well, until they connect fully. And this is already looking quite reasonable. Let's see what I can do to improve it. I think adding some weights on these vertices will improve the deformation when I raise the arm. But I need to smooth a little bit as well. I can go here to the blur tool and reduce its strength. Usually a strength of 1 is great, but here I want to be really subtle and just blur very lightly. So here there is overlapping between the geometries, but that is fine with me. There is some stretching in the texture here. If I assign this part to the upper arm, then when I lower the arm, I may get undesirable deformations here. So instead, I'm going to assign these weights to the shoulder bone. And I'm going to paint plenty of positive weights for the shoulder in this cloth area. But I'll make sure not to paint on the very edge, because it needs to stay connected to the upper arm. So now I'm smoothing. and now we are getting really good deformations even at extreme poses. Things are looking really great. But let's go back to the fingers for a second, because I think we can learn one more weight painting tool. I'll select all of the finger controls, and with individual origins, scale them to see the deformations. And they're not too bad, and as I said earlier, because of the topology of these fingers, giving them perfect mechanical deformations may actually be impossible. But we can try to improve them as much as possible. So let's go to Object Mode, Shift select the fingers and go to Weight Paint mode. Alt and click on one of the finger bones, and then Alt, Shift and click on the remaining ones. Also include the thumb bones. So now what we want is to harden these weights, meaning that each bone will deform a precise part of the fingers, and there won't be much of a smooth transition between the bones. So with all of these finger bones selected, I can go to Weights, Levels. If you have experience with the level tools in photo editing programs, this is kind of similar, although the interface is a little bit different. We saw this subset selection in the Smooth tool as well. I think it's fairly intuitive, but Active Group means the currently active bone and group. Selected Pose Bones means all of the currently selected deforming bones. Deform Pose Bones means all deforming bones in the rig. And All Groups means all groups that we have here on the vertex groups, regardless of their function. In this case, we want selected pose bones, so that levels will work simultaneously on all selected bones. Now, if I play with the offset, you'll see that a positive value increases the weights. This is actually the opposite effect of what we want. Instead, we're going to take the offset to a negative value, and that will start to harden the weights. Notice the difference that it makes. Now, if I check the weights, it will look like we got lower values. What I'm expecting to see is fully red bones, but instead I see this yellow and green. This is a problem with normalization. These weights are really fully red, but the levels operation seems to mess up the normalization. So let's undo until I have all bones selected again, and I'll go to Weights, Normalize All, and disable Lock Active. If Lock Active is enabled, then normalization will be applied to all bones except for the active one. So we disable this option to include all bones. Now the weights will be normalized, and I'll see the correct red color here. Great, now we have much harder weights on the fingers, and they look nicer. Only this one needs a little bit of work. So I'll enable this bone, set my settings, and I'll just click lightly here and smooth a bit, and that's it, fixed. This concludes the weight painting of the mechanical arm, and also the main weight painting portion in level 3 of this course. Congratulations, that was a lot of weight painting, but we did it. Your weight painting skills should be really solid now. In the next video, we'll focus on rigging the mechanical arm. And as part of that, we'll learn a new constraint that is so powerful and easy to use, it kind of feels like cheating.